The 2024 Online Scotch Whisky Awards nominations. This is the fourth time around for this initiative. We're looking forward to it. Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OSWAs. Welcome to the 2024 Online Scotch Whisky Awards. Hope you're all doing very, very well. I'm going to share a wee confession right at the start of things tonight because for me, I love the winners' ceremony. I love the participation. I love the people coming forward to nominate, and I love the people coming forward to accept awards and things like that. The winners' show is very, very cool indeed, and it is a wee bit of an event every year. But I kind of love this side of it. I love the upfront side of it. I love to see it all coming together. I love to see the nominations coming together, and I love to share it with you. And I think for a lot of the community out there, I mean, let's be honest, there's an incidental benefit, I hope, to the industry that maybe people are intrigued and they pick up bottles based on the discussion around the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. But that's an incidental thing. It's not its mission. It's not its goal. Its goal is to inform the community based on what we are enjoying as an online Scotch whisky drinking community. And some of the nominations that come up every single year motivates me to buy something that I've never tried or never purchased in the past. And that is what I'm hoping that we'll be able to share with you tonight. Some valuable recommendations for all of you. There's one or two slight modifications to this year, and I think that's one of the beauties of the Online Scotch Whisky Awards, that we're trying it out. There's no way we're going to get it perfect first time, and each year we've made some very, very slight evolutionary, not revolutionary, tweaks to things in order to see if we can improve things or make it a wee bit more interesting and beneficial to everyone that's involved. Anyway, it's wonderful to have you all. Thank you very, very much for your time on this Saturday evening. I hope you're sitting somewhere comfortably, and I hope you've got something nice in a glass to participate and listen along. Ralphie's getting himself ready. He's sitting somewhere in the Irish Sea right now. He's probably coming to us from his bothy, as he always does, and he'll be joining me in a few minutes, and we'll just tear straight in and share with you 6 nominations for each of the 9 categories tonight, the same as we always do. Let me share with you first some of the changes that we've had for the session this year. Hopefully you'll understand why we've made these changes. We've made these changes purely to keep things fresh and keep things as varied and as mixed as possible. So for the 2024 session, the first thing that you'll be aware of, we spoke about it and we put it into place last year, was the concept of the Trifecta Award. Make no mistake, this is not a punishment. This is a legitimate, genuine award, and it'll be very, very difficult for anyone to get their hands on a trifecta. But already we will be dishing out 4 Trifecta Awards in 2024. That's for Arran 10-year-old, it's for Springbank Distillery, it's for Ardnamurchan Distillery, and it's for Signatory Vintage Independent Bottlers. What the trifecta means is that if someone in some category has won the category in 3 times, they step forward for a year where they do not participate in the nominations for the 4th year, let's say, and they accept a Trifecta Award instead. That way, with them out of the picture for that year, it's very, very interesting, I think, to see who floats to the top while they're not participating. Now, it might be the case that they come back in again and they just start to pick things up very, very easily, and they win quite easily. That might be that it takes a long, long time for things like dynamics like that to change in Scotch whisky. In that case, we just need to roll with it for now and see what happens in the future. The OSWAs will remain that wee bit flexible in order to accommodate these things, in order to innovate where we think we're going to be able to bring something positive, something like this. Something else that we're going to change for 2024, that we already have changed for 2024, and that is more community involvement right up front. In the past, we've gone to a set of core contributors. Now, if we went to 10 or 20 or 30, let's imagine we went to 30 core contributors and asked them to put forward their nominations and maybe give 1 or 2 each, we could be looking at anywhere between 30 and 60 nominations for each category. It's huge. That's just to kick things off. So we need to think carefully about how we do these things. But this year we decided just to kick the doors open on it. And right at the very first stage, before we'd asked anyone for the 2024 nominations, we went out and we harvested nominations from the community. You might remember when Ralphie and I launched this initiative this year on August 12th, or sorry, was it August 22nd? I'm forgetting now. It was about a month ago. We discussed with everyone that there was an ability for you to fill in a form and put forward your nominations. We went through, we crunched all the data. After that was collected, well over 800 of you stepped forward in that very short space of time. I think it was less than a week that was live. Over 800 of you stepped forward to put your nominations forward and get involved in the front end. And what we did is we went through all the data, we crunched all the data, and that gave us a top 12 for each of the categories. So when we went out to our core contributors and to harvest their nominations, we have to take our place as guides. This isn't just a case of measuring what's popular amongst the community. There has to be something involved with people really, really thinking and putting thought into some of the really special event whiskies or the good value whiskies that they've been enjoying in the previous years. And as online writers, commentators, YouTubers, podcasters, whoever it may have been, they are doing that week in, week out, month in, month out. But when we went to them this year, they had a list in front of them of inspiration from the community. They had all the community nominations, the top 12 for all of them. And as we harvested the nominations from those guys, they were also voting on the nominations from the community. That distilled it down to a top 6 from the community that made it through to the huge pool of contributors. It was 80 that we went out to this year, along with the nominations that we'd harvested from the core group. And the pool of 80 then refine these nominations, and that's what gives us the 6 nominations for each category that I'm going to share with you tonight. I hope that's all clear. The way that we did that is, as well as going out with a form to the contributors, we started with you, the community, and we put out that form to you, and you were able to write in anything that you wanted. There was no pre-suggestions, no radio buttons, no check boxes. You could literally pick anything that you wanted. Now, one dynamic that we are a wee bit nervous about doing it in this way is that we end up just celebrating what sells best. We end up celebrating what goes furthest, that type of thing. So there always has to be layers of refinement where it goes through a collaborative process where people can look at what's been selected and put their own choices in. I'm quite excited with the lists, the nominations that we're going to be sharing with you tonight, and I hope that you find something of interest in it too. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if Ralphie is in good shape to come in and join us. Give us a thumbs up, my friend, if you're good. He's comfortable. Fantastic. Let's just welcome Ralphie in and kick things off for 2024. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good, Roy, and slightly comfortable. Yes, definitely, but reasonably comfortable. I've got my whiskey poured here in the bothy, and looking forward to presenting the nominations with you this evening, because this is the 4th year of the online Scotch Whisky Awards, which, as people will acknowledge, has become a little bit of a litmus paper, a barometer as to what the interest is in and what is perceived to be not just good value whiskey in terms of quality, but good value whiskey in terms of the price that's being asked for it. So you've got this dynamic going on that's being delivered as an assessment by the wider online whiskey community, which, as you and I and everybody knows, is ever expanding, because it's a changing world out there, Roy. And people are generally aware that things aren't going quite as expected in terms of volume of sales globally for Scotch whisky. And therefore, probably it's time, a great opportunity and time for a number of whisky businesses to recalibrate their priorities. Who are their genuine, interested, and invested customers? And if they want any assistance, we're the online community are here to help if they want our input. And the OSWAs is a very good pointer as to the direction of demand, interest, and you and I can see things tangibly changing, because the internet puts so much more information out there so much faster for everybody to see. And it's far from finished yet. I really like the fact, Roy, that the OSWAs are really consolidating now. The OSWAs are settling down and becoming more mainstream as a point of reference for people who are not just experienced whiskey hands and malt mates for both our channels and beyond, but also who are starting into whiskey now. And
this is crucial. Yeah.
This is important. People that are just starting out, they want to know as soon as possible where is that precious point of access of information on the internet that's going to deliver them far better results for their investment in the bottles they buy.
Exactly. And I think you opened up there with making the point of value.
Mm-hmm.
It's more critical, I think, today than it's ever been, because not only do we face the spectre of these years of rising prices now, but we're also at a time where, you know, everybody's feeling the pinch a wee bit. And I think that's one of the dynamics that's pressuring the sales of whiskey and, let's be fair, you know, premium or luxury items the world over right now.
Yeah, well,
so if we can get together and we can celebrate some of the things that people are genuinely spending their money on and finding genuine value in the experience,
yeah,
that's going to help people hopefully sip better quality and less quantity.
Absolutely. It's certainly been happening for the last few years with wine. So if any distilleries want to see how things can go wrong, they should be looking more closely at the wine industry and duly taking note.
And I think if we do look at the wine industry, I mean, I'm sure neither of us are wine experts. You probably know quite a wee bit more than I do, Ralfy, but I know that one of the dangers is not to make something cheap just because times are under pressure. The quality has to be maintained. Good value and cheap are two very, very different things. Yeah.
Totally.
Is there anything that you're hoping for tonight? Because this is 4 years round. You would expect that things are pretty static in Scotch whisky, right? Things are pretty static in world whisky. You know, you don't see a core range being re-released every year or something like that. What are you expecting to see and share in the nominations tonight?
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully a few surprises, Roy, and hopefully the return of some familiar, reliable brands who have rewarded our investment in them by continuing to bottle quality on consecutive batches. So we're not in that awful position where we've had a really good whiskey from a brand, and then we go back less than a year or a year later to essentially a different batch of that same badged product. And we find ourselves disappointed, not because the flavor's a little bit different, but because the quality is not what it previously was. And this is something that the whiskey industry, particularly in Scotland, but globally, needs to take far more seriously. And it will vary between different brands and how methodical they are with their housekeeping. But they need to be fully aware that we are talking volubly and in groups on the forums, on the discords, in the Reddits. We are talking critically about when they are getting it wrong, and they're losing sales. And the worst sort of loss that they can have is that they so demoralize an existing loyal customer that they make things easy for themselves by walking away and abandoning a particular brand. And we're seeing this happening with a couple of brands, well, at least one brand, well, more than one at the moment. Am I right?
I have to say, absolutely. I think you're quite right. And I think that what you talk about when you're in the Reddits or the Discords or these forums or wherever it may be, it's often not a single voice. It's often you see consensus building in these places.
Yeah.
And it's people that have bought the products with their own hard-earned cash. I would suspect that the majority of what you're going to see in the OSWAs tonight are from producers who don't act like that. I think the majority of them have made it into the OSWAs because they put integrity and quality and value at the forefront. Yeah. I'm not going to give any spoilers, obviously, but I think it's worthwhile just pointing out a small spoiler for what's lies ahead tonight. I think you're right about you want to see the consistency over the years. You want to see the reliable brands coming back at each time. But I think we both get excited when we see new entries making it in there, because that measures the changing landscape and the variation that's available within whiskey year in, year out. So to go ahead this year, half of the nominations that we're going to share tonight, Ralfy, were not nominated in 2023.
50%.
Yeah. And a third of them have not been nominated in any previous OSWAs. They are absolutely brand new. And I think that that's interesting. So without us not really forcing anything, it's almost like a self-cleaning thing that people are working together in this format in order to obviously maintain that consistency and celebrate the things that represent really good value and good quality, but also finding ways to bring in new and interesting takes that haven't had any spotlight potentially in the past.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting, right?
It is. It's also very telling, Roy, as to the fluidity of loyalties and the degree of exploration by your online informed whiskey community, who are picking up very quickly, far more quickly than ever possible historically, on where the good bottlings are, specifically the ones that are representing good value for money. And they're being highlighted, and then literally the bulk of the sales is happening online within 48 to 72 hours. The speed at which good whiskey is being discovered and then selling has never been sharper and faster than it is now. And I just wonder to what extent distilleries have examined this objectively and seeing how that they can tailor their delivery to the market to tap into this phenomenon.
Well, I think that our goal, our objective with this is for the community, right? Is to bring them year after year, bring them a good solid selection of nominations in each of the 9 categories that they can lean on and rely on, whatever stage that they are in their whiskey journey, you know. And the more experienced people that are not going to get any surprises from this tonight, they're here to help guide the rest of the community too as peers. But I think that what we want to be able to do is hopefully give the industry another metric for feedback. It's up to them whether they choose to pay any attention to it or not. There's nothing we can do about that. But we're standing here as independents and we're giving our honest feedback and our honest information. And more than anything, we're kind of holding a mirror up to our own community and saying, this is what you are enjoying.
Yeah.
And you and I and all the rest of the people that participate in it can have a wee think and discussion over why we think that is.
This situation is absolutely unique to the OSWAs, Roy. Absolutely unique. There's
Yeah,
no other platform that delivers this quality of information between customer and producer as eloquently and as concisely as the online Scotch Whisky Awards, which is why we designed it this way.
Well, eloquent and concise is not words that are often used with aquavitae, but we'll take it, buddy, if we're the ones out there doing it. Well, let's raise a wee glass to everyone to welcome them all and wish yourselves a wee bit of good luck for the nominations ahead. Cheers.
Yes.
Best of luck.
I've noticed neither of us have got caramel colouring in our whiskey here, Roy. Must be a trend. We're following trends here.
Well, I'm not going to share what's in the glass because I happen to know that what's in the glass here tonight is actually going to come up in the nominations very, very soon.
Right.
So let's get on with it, my friend. Very best of luck. Thanks to everybody for hanging out with us and participating. Let's get the nominations for 2024 underway. And of course, we're going to start it like we always do with the first category, which is, of course, the best value topic. We get that out of the way right up front. But first, I'll define with you quickly, and this is the definition that you'll see when you come to vote. It's the definition that we approached all of the community with and the contributing contributors as well. We define it as fairly priced whiskies that offer great quality and help people take their first steps, yet still provide great value sipping for experienced drinkers. There's no guide on price. It's based on what you feel best provides value wherever you are. The prices right throughout tonight's session is based on UK prices, and they will vary from market to market. The reason that we include the prices here is not so that you can demand to pay that price or expect to pay that price. It will vary. It is at the point of nomination, we take a point, we freeze where the pricing was when we, as a guide for everyone, when we offered the nomination. This is also a trifecta category. That means that there was a product that won this for 3 years. And to celebrate its third win, it will be given in 2024 a trifecta award, and that is, of course, Arran 10-year-old. So there will be no Arran 10-year-old in tonight's nomination. It's going to be interesting to see what makes it in its place. Over to you, Ralfy.
Thank you, Roy. And the nominations are as follows. Ardnamurchan AD Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
Nominated once before in 2023.
Benromach 10-year-old Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
First time nominee.
Craigellachie 13-year-old Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
First time nominee.
Glengarry 12-year-old Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
First time nominee.
Kilkerran 12-year-old Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
Nominated twice before.
And finally, Lechake 10-year-old Single Malt Scotch Whisky.
Nominated twice before. Wow, some pretty bottles there, Ralphie. I have to say we're at the good value end of things where you would expect the pricing to be quite neat. And the most expensive bottle here is £54. Quite a decent selection there of £50 and under. Anybody with these 6 bottles on their shelf at home is already sipping a fantastic breadth of high quality, delicious whiskies. Best value does not demand that it's Scotch whisky, but in the 2024 OSWAs, every single whiskey that's made it through is as a Scotch single malt whiskey. Quite a good range at Ralphie, right?
Well, it's already self-evident in the print under the bottles. There's nothing at 40%. 40% doesn't cut it in terms of delivering the full authenticity of smell and taste. the volume of alcohol in the bottling is a serious factor in the authentic presentation of the whiskey. The majority of the bottles there, 5 out of 6, are 46% and above. And I think when you look at the amount of customs and excise duty in the UK, it makes the price range in relation to the quality in these bottles even better value in the UK market, because you have got an excellent start to your collection there, covering unpeated, peated, and every single one of these bottlings is quality.
Yeah, I agree. And, the reason that we equate ABV to quality is that, we can enjoy low ABV whiskies that are naturally low ABV whiskies. But the reason that we look for that marker, that higher ABV, 46% typically and above, is because it tends to come with the reassurance that no filtration has been used on the product.
Totally.
And that goes a long way for mouthfeel, and it can often go a long way to helping the flavour experience too. I think you're right. I think that's an excellent collection of whiskies, and I think it's an excellent opening start to the 2024 OSWAs. Well done, everyone involved in putting this selection together. Yeah, a couple of favourites of mine involved in there as well. Good stuff, Ralphie. Good stuff. Will we just get on? Will we just go on with this? This is
push
exciting.
on. We're gaining momentum here, Roy. We're gaining momentum.
The second category, Best Blended Whisky 2024. This is not blended malts. This is genuine blended Scotch whisky. Blended malts has its own category coming up next. What do we mean by blended whisky? We're talking about that idea that it's often said that a truly great blend can deliver an experience that's greater than the sum of its parts. Some of the most celebrated whiskies over history have been blended whiskies, and this is their category. Now, we've seen huge upheaval in this category in the time that I've been enjoying whiskey, Ralphie, disappearing, and then coming back with a vengeance. Be interesting to see if tonight's nominations reflects that. Take it away, my friend.
And the nominations are as follows. Compass Box Glasgow Blend, blended Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
Hibiki Harmony Japanese, blended whisky.
First time nominee.
Maclean's Nose, blended Scotch whisky.
Second time nominee.
Thompson Brothers 6-year-old TB/BSW, blended Scotch whisky.
Second time nominee and the winner in 2023.
Turntable Bittersweet Symphony, blended Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
And finally, Woven Super Blend, blended Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
Right.
We do not have a lot of coverage on our channels, Ralphie, on blends. Would you agree? We have played with it. Interestingly, I've got a Ralphie Whiskey of the Year in the lineup here. Your Whiskey of the Year from last year. We do try to, and we do explore blends and things like that, but we still see the community. There is that kind of almost that obsession with the whole kind of malt whiskey, single malt whiskey specifically tag. However, I am seeing some fantastic things happening in blended whiskey. Harmony, Hibiki Harmony, Glasgow Blend's been around a long time, but everything to the right of those, Maclean's Nose, Thompson Brothers TBBSW, Turntable. Turntable's a brand new company on blending, as is Woven, a brand new company based on blending. These companies, these products are adding a brand new splash of color to the landscape, right?
Yes, and look at the ABV of these bottlings. There's nothing at 40% again. We're looking at what the impression I get, Roy, is the reinvention of the Scottish blended whisky, the global blended whisky, traditional blended whisky category.
Yeah.
There's some excitement going on, and this is just the initial inaugural stage, although there has been brands like Compass Box around for quite a number of years doing an excellent job in what they do. It's never really become mainstreamed, but I think it's going to be really telling if we start to see particularly the Scotch whisky industry react to their downturn in global sales, which are really quite significant, by introducing new higher spec brands for what's left of the customers who are far more flavor and smell aware.
Yeah, interestingly, and not disconnected from the comments that you're making, we've got Eric Waite, Whiskey Studies, one of our partners in this venture, one of our contributors. And Eric's asking, how much do you think being in a post-COVID year affects the nominations as we have more access? So I think he's reflecting on the craziness that we saw through COVID, where people were sitting at home with time on their hands, perhaps a lot more available disposable income on their hands as well to play with whiskey and source whiskey. You remember that was a time of the queues around the block and really difficult to get hold of it. Eric's asking, how do you think that we are in 2024 with regards to that, Ralfy?
I think that the novelty of pandemic lockdown circumstances is it's passing, it's fading, but something has changed. Something that's come out of that, a certain consciousness in society generally, where people are thinking, what am I earning? What does it cost me to earn? How should I spend it more carefully and more wisely, and be less liable to be getting suckered by the mainstream brands, which in many people's opinions are simply presenting more blandness into the market. And when people were stuck at home, they couldn't go to pubs, they couldn't go to hotels, they couldn't go to restaurants initially. People were buying their alcohol online. In other words, if they were traditional whiskey buyers that would go to a local shop or even a supermarket, although supermarkets were still selling, and a lot, people disrupted the pattern of consumption. And in that situation, are thinking a bit more about, actually, I want better quality. I'm going to buy less,
Yep.
and I'm going to buy better.
And you know what that does, Ralfy? Once they've had that experience, once they've gone through that process, that experience,
Yeah,
it drives more of the pursuit of better flavour and better quality. A big thanks to Stevie O as well for his generous donation there.
And it does so, Roy, because people then discuss it online when people are Instagramming, TikToking, when they are Redditing or whatever medium they're using, even Facebook. People are picking up, well, what are you drinking tonight? What have you got there? FaceTiming even on mobile devices. People are saying, right, we're sitting out in the garden, we're getting some fresh air, we've had a little bit of exercise, and here is the alcoholic beverage that we're drinking a little more modestly, not too modestly, but a little bit more modestly, and we're enjoying the flavor. So people are talking about enjoying flavor now, whereas a few years ago, people focused on the brand label and the brand-driven message. That's now weakening.
We're certainly seeing a crazy amount of knowledge in the community, and I think that drives the integrity and the depth and meaning of the OSWAs too. The more experience that you have out there in the community, the more they feed back, the more they help each other, the more they understand, the more discerning that they become. And I think that makes the OSWAs and the feedback that it potentially provides even more valuable. Yeah. Fantastic stuff. I think we're in good shape. We can go on and experience what people have brought to us for the next category. This is, of course, blended malt. The B word is still here, but this is all about malt whiskies. This is just malt whiskey. And for this category in 2024, we define it as blended whiskies typically use different grains. Here, blended malt, the fast-growing category of blended malt, uses only different malts. Some of the most interesting, in our opinion, and attainable releases in recent times have been blended malts, and this is a category that we share them. Ralfy, when you're ready.
And the nominations are as follows. Campbellton Loch blended malt Scotch whisky.
Third time nominee and the eventual winner in 2023.
And yep. Compass Box Orchard House blended malt Scotch whisky.
Third time nominee and the winner back in 2022.
McNair's Lumreek 12-year-old blended malt Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
Old Perth Cask Strength blended malt Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
Thompson Brothers 8-year-old North Highland blended malt Scotch whisky.
First time nominee.
And finally, Thompson Brothers 8-year-old SRV5 blended malt Scotch whisky.
Third time nominee, and it's had a nomination in this category for 3 out of the 4 OSWAs to date. Ralphie, I'll tell you what strikes me through looking at this set of nominations. The blends, 4 of the blends, 4 out of 6 were brand new.
Yeah.
Here we've got 3, we've got half of the range brand new, and yet these are things that are fairly familiar to us, or perhaps maybe familiar to you and I, Ralphie. Mm-hmm. These are all these collections, these set of 6 that we've seen. If we were just to take these 6 things and put it on the shelf, look at the breadth of flavors that they give. We've got the light fruity style in Orchard House. We've got the Campbelltown style represented there. Old Perth. We've even got a cask strength variant in the lineup here. 58.6% ABV at £48 must be one of the best value under the radar whiskies out there right now. We've got the Thompson Brothers playfulness coming through again and being celebrated, and we've even got a peaty pick, a really quite smoky peaty pick from Billy Walker in the McNair's Lumreek there as well. Indeed. What a selection, right? All the corners of Scotch whiskies' broad flavour profiles are covered, and I think that's been a theme right through.
When an experienced malt mate is looking at the incredible selection of what's available to buy, they're always keeping one eye on the blended malt section because it's becoming far more dynamic now.
Yeah,
it's not that long ago. It was really an afterthought, an occasional novelty for the single malt drinker who was looking for something on a budget and a real budget. But that is changing because the quality of particularly these small batch, and generally everything there is either very small or small batch. So it's not involving a lot of casks in the collective for the batch. You're getting a lot of signature, a lot of identity, and some real value for money. And as you pointed out, the Old Perth cask strength, you're up there 58.6%. And it's a gentle, very amicable sherry monster of a dram. And it's £48. Now, you're struggling at that strength to get better value. It's very heartwarming for me as an old whiskey hack to see these nominations, because it tells me one simple thing, Roy. It tells me that people really know their whiskies, and that certainly the informative choice in blended malt shows that more and more people are looking at blended malts as tangible, respectable options.
I want to back you up on everything that you've just said. You're absolutely spot on, Ralphie. The concept of teaspooned malts, of blended malts, of all of these things that you hear, never ever let any of that put you off. Never let that stand in the way of you having a wonderful bottle of really kind of tasty whiskey. Look at the prices right across the board here. There's only one that goes above £50, just a wee bit. The value here is absolutely fantastic. And the quality, the flavour, I've got every single one of these on the shelf, and I'd vouch for everyone. I'm the same as you. I feel proud. I feel excited by our community, our core contributors, that were able to put this flight of 6 whiskies together in a category that is growing and growing fast.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We move on, my friend. We now move into a category that's quite tricky, I think, for the online Scotch whisky community, because it moves into a space of we're being asked to step outside of our comfort zone a little bit. If we are fixated with malt whiskies and with only occasional dabbling in blends and things like that, it can be a real sell for us to go into places where other grains are involved, grains like wheat, rye, whatever it may be. But these things are becoming more and more understood and more available throughout the world. It's inevitable that in this category we're going to see things that are typically not Scotch whisky. But this is about us trying to be as inclusive as possible and remain as promiscuous and exploratory as we can possibly be. We define this category as open to all grain types, excluding malt. So rye, corn, wheat, and anything else that is included, and that opens up many other styles of whiskey, regardless of how you spell that word whiskey. Ralfy, when you're ready, take it away, my friend.
And the nominations are as follows. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
Third time nominee.
Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Strength Tennessee Whiskey.
Second time nominee.
Millstone 100 Rye Dutch Single Rye Whiskey.
First time nominee.
Powers Johns Lane 12-year-old Single Pot Still Irish Whiskey.
First time nominee.
Redbreast 12-year-old Cask Strength Single Pot Still Irish Whiskey.
Second time nominee and the winner back in 2022.
And finally, Wild Turkey Rare Breed Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
This is a persistent turkey, I'll tell you, Ralfy. A persistent turkey. Two-time winner, 2021 winner and 2023 winner, being split by the Redbreast. So, yes, something that we continually talk about. Wild Turkey Rare Breed as being part of the OSWAs. It's won it twice. It seems to be one of these things that's enjoyed by the Scotch whisky drinking community. I have a theory. Would you like me to share what that theory is with you, Ralphie?
Well, I've got a theory as well, but please present your theory first, Roy.
I think it's probably the same theory. What we have in the Wild Turkey Rare Breed is delicious Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey at a very generous ABV of 58.4%. It's not barrel strength, but it's high ABV Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey that's delicious and priced at £58.
Yeah. I would second that, and I would add that Wild Turkey Rare Breed in particular is consistent. The quality is dependable, and for Scotch whisky drinkers who are looking for a bourbon with so much choice, bearing in mind the good stuff tends to stay in America, and what's available in the European market and the British market tends to be the more generic brands. Not always, but most of the time. And also some of the bourbon is really shockingly expensive for what it actually is.
Especially when the land's here, yes.
Absolutely. So that Wild Turkey, for the strength and the price, it's accessible, it's amenable, it delivers what one would expect from a competent American bourbon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's interesting, depending on the company that you keep and the people that you mix with. I know at the Glasgow Whisky Club, a club that we've both either members of or been members of, Ralphie, that if you were to canvass the Glasgow Whisky Club, I think that you would see less of this type of whiskey being consumed. But the more that, especially us as onliners, we seem to be exposed to far less parochial whiskey drinking circles, and that naturally draws us and attracts us to other pools of whiskey styles, categories, and profile. And it means that we've been picking up things like Wild Turkey's, Jack Daniels, the double barrel, the single barrel strength, and the high strength Elijah Craig from the States. But what we've got mixing it here is 2 single pot still Irish whiskies, and something that's quite a standout for me, Sudam Distillery, Millstone 100 rye there, Dutch rye whiskey, a cult whiskey with a huge following. You need to be exposed to that whiskey in order to understand why it's celebrated like it is.
Yeah.
And it means, like the theme that we go through, we talk about all the time, we just need to be able to adapt and be open to these new flavors, and unlock potentially new avenues for us to explore. I do stand with you on your point. Price remains a barrier.
Yes, it does. Interestingly, though, you have the Millstone is I was going to say it was going to be the most expensive there, but Elijah Craig is definitely taking the crown in that. But
based on obviously Elijah Craig is artificially, or not artificially, but it's and domestically in the States, Elijah Craig is much more affordable than that. But we base this on UK prices.
Totally.
It's
lovely to see the newcomers there, actually, because it's kind of, excuse the pun, it's spicing up the category a bit.
Yes, I think that's important, and I think that there is a risk that the OSWAs, what it actually does is that people look at that and say, well, I've never had this, that, and this, but I like that, and they vote for it, and that's just the nature of it. It's not the intention of the OSWAs to measure what's popular. It's the nature of the OSWAs, or the mission of the OSWAs, to measure what is being enjoyed. So we always ask people when they're voting to not vote for something that you've never tried. But if you're voting for something that you've tried, it has to be something that you would repurchase, buy again, or something that you would recommend to an interested friend. That's the thing behind the whole scheme. Interesting lineup. And that kind of concludes the first section. That's us through 4 categories now, Ralphie. We're doing quite well. And now we move into distilleries and independent bottlers.
We do.
The next one's going to be an interesting one because it's a trifecta category as well. Ralphie, this is best distillery. Now, we know that this has been, we talk about celebrating the best distilleries, talking about celebrating where it's made. Producers who are bringing the best whiskies in the last year, the ones that are committed to available and affordable quality, not the ones who are chasing the pricing that the market will stand. We are celebrating the ones that are dedicated to the long-term game. Springbank has been knocking this out of the park for 3 consecutive years. Springbank will not participate this year, but they will step forward this year and hopefully collect their very, very well-deserved reward of a trifecta in 2024. But again, it's one of those categories that's now laid open a bit more because the obvious winner is not in play anymore. When you're ready, my friend.
And the nominations are as follows. Ardnamurchan Distillery, Western Highlands, Scotland.
3rd time nominee.
Benromach Distillery, Speyside, Scotland.
Second time nominee.
Glengyle Distillery, Campbelltown, Scotland.
First time nominee.
Glen Scotia Distillery, Campbelltown, Scotland.
Third time nominee.
Loch Lomond Distillery, Southern Highlands, Scotland.
Third time nominee.
And finally, Kilchoman Distillery, Islay, Scotland.
First time nominee. I have to, there's a huge relief with this category here for me. Honestly, Ralphie, I don't think we have ever put forward anything that I wouldn't want to see in Best Distillery. They've all been worthy of celebration. I've loved seeing them all, but it was always a little bit heartbreaking for me that Kilchoman and Kilkerran, the two Ks, right, never made it through in 3 years of the OSWAs. Now we're in our fourth year.
Yeah.
Maybe arguably because Springbank is not in the picture. But now we're in the fourth year. We've got Kilkerran, Glengyle Distillery in Campbelltown. Absolutely, it's fantastic to see mixing things up, and Kilchoman on Islay as well. What is stunning to me is that we've got Ardnamurchan here, and you're surprised to see that this is a new distillery. What's more surprising to me is it's not a surprise, but it's incredible to see this is their third time being nominated in the best distillery category.
Yeah. I'd just like to add, Roy, that I know that the clear majority of malt mates and whiskey fans watching will know that Kilkerran is the brand of Glengyle Distillery. But there may be a few that haven't made the connection there. So just to confirm, when it says Glengyle Distillery, it doesn't produce Glengyle single malt. It produces Kilkerran single malt, because of historical copyright agreements.
Yeah. And for everyone, we're going to immediately after the session tonight, after we've released all the nominations with you, you'll be able to go and start your votes. You don't need to worry about voting so early. You might be planning in the weeks ahead to go and try more whiskies and things and make up your mind. You can vote right now and come back and edit your vote anytime you like, multiple times if you want. And in that form, in that vote, when you see Glengyle listed in brackets, as Ralphie's quite rightly pointed out, it reminds everyone that we're talking about Kilkerran. It's wonderful, I think, to see Benromach in the mix there. It's fantastic to see the consistency of Glen Scotia and Loch Lomond, not just making an occasional appearance, a token appearance, consistently coming to the top of people's selections. People are nominating them time and time again, and once they're nominated, people are voting for that to pass through. So we've got some real consistency there in Glen Scotia and Loch Lomond, and it's nice to see Benromach back again for the second time. I'm not going to even guess or speculate what's going to pick up Best Distillery. There's one or two notable omissions that haven't made it through that could have been in the mix here, but Ralphie, this is the problem. It can only be 6.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of you going to be going, where's this and where's that? This is what has come out of it. It's not Ralphie's picks. It's not Roy's picks. This is the community picks. And it's a fantastic set of 6.
It is. I can't fault it in any way, actually, because it's very well informed and comprehensive. It really covers the array of relatively new distilleries and some well-established distilleries that have had their light very much under the bushel, under a hood for so long. Glen Scotia, obviously. Ardnamurchan is a relatively new distillery. It's in its 10th year now. Benromach, although despite being a well-established traditional distillery, was really resurrected by its owners fairly recently, and Kilchoman has been a brand new Islay project. About 20 years
2005, yeah.
2005,
What we've
yes.
essentially got here is because Glengyle Kilkerran is a new distillery. I know it was it existed in the past, but it was shuttered for what, 80 years more, 1926 or something. It closed.
Absolutely.
So it's essentially a new distillery. Ardnamurchan's New Kilhome is a new distillery. Benromac, Glengyle Kilkerran, and Glen Scotia are Renaissance stories, and Loch Lomond is a mid-60s distillery. Fascinating to see. We're after these things because of the quality of the malt that comes out of them.
And the presentation is generally, they do have bottlings. If not the full range, then part of the range is available bottled at Integrity.
Yeah, I know that you're mentioning Benromac there, but I think everything outside of their core range that they've brought to us as new product has been fully natural, and they have to be applauded for that.
Yes.
We move on. Now we celebrate the best new distillery. It's inevitable that in time we can see, if depending on how long the online Scotch Whisky Awards endure, that this category might be shifted to focus on something else. But right now we are still celebrating an explosion in new distilleries. And we define this category to celebrate just how much choice we have today. Many of the things that we're most excited about today are coming from brand new independent producers. And this is the category we'd hope to highlight those founded within the last 10 years in recognition of their achievements. And this is, by the way, the founding is based on when they started to make whiskey rather than when they first cut soil or something like that. This is also a trifecta category. This has been won 3 years in a row by Ardnamurchan. Ardnamurchan would have been able to participate in this year. This would have been the last year of participation for them, but they are now under trifecta, so they'll accept a trifecta award hopefully this year, and they'll be able to announce who the winner is in their absence. Frustratingly for Ardnamurchan, this would have been their last year, so they won't be participating. They have to play in the big boys' playground now from here on in, as one of the team at Ardnamurchan once famously said. Ralfy, who's here when Ardnamurchan isn't?
Right, and the nominations are as follows. Ardnahoe Distillery, Islay, Scotland.
First time nominee.
Glasgow Distillery, Lowlands, Scotland.
Second time nominee.
Lag Distillery, Islands, Scotland.
Second time nominee.
Loch Lea Distillery, Lowlands, Scotland.
First time nominee.
Isle of Raasay Distillery, Islands, Scotland.
Third time nominee.
And finally, Chorvaig Distillery, Islands, Scotland.
Third time nominee.
Thank goodness for the new distilleries, Roy, because they are giving the entire online community so much valuable conversation. They are coming along just at the right time as we start to, perhaps not everybody, but some of us get a little bit fatigued at the manufactured and applied over marketing of some mainstream brands. And here's these little distilleries, Roy. They don't have big marketing budgets. They don't have big marketing teams. And therefore, we find our engagement and connection with the brand to be, frankly, very refreshing.
I back you up 100% on that, Ralphie. What's amazing to me is a couple of things here. If I look at these 6 distilleries, despite a couple of them appearing for the first time ever, a couple of them have been persistent in the nominations process, but not successful under the OSWAs initiative. But if I look at them now, all of these brands I feel a connection with them already. I feel like they are already established. They are starting to feel not so new, perhaps with the exception of Arnaho, which is absolutely new in the last year. What I do notice about every one of these brands, I look at these brands and I see a face. I see a personality. I see character behind them. And I see people willing to step forward and connect and shake hands, help liquid get onto lips, and help them get their message across about what they're doing and how they're invested in the product that they're making.
If we were to sum it up in one word, one single word, that word would be sincerity.
Yes. Earnest, sincerity, personality. I think it's spot on. I think it's not wanting to dwell on any specific one. Ralph and I wouldn't want to kind of be seen to be favouring any one of these. But I think we're, as you opened up this little passage, as you start to speak about these distilleries, Ralphie, you talked about just being grateful that they're here.
Yeah, they are providing a real breath of fresh air into the online collective global whiskey narrative. And we're delighted that they're here. We know it's small volume. We know they're small distilleries. We know they're just getting started. And we know that they face a lot of obstacles because of the socio-economic conditions in which they are operating. But with distilleries like these, I feel a lot more confident about the future reputation of Scotch whisky, which boils down to two primary things: the caliber of smell and the quality of taste.
One thing I want to make note of, I think it's amazing to see the amount of Lowlands distilleries that are in here. 3 distilleries from the Lowlands. Okay, we know that Lag is actually on Arran Island, but on their website, they declare themselves as a Lowland distillery based on the Highland fault line. There are so many distilleries that are not here, and the Lowlands come to mind specifically. You think of the Lindores, you think of the distilleries that are out there in Fife that maybe they've had a mention in the past, Kingsbarns, these type of distilleries, but they haven't been quite as persistent. I suspect that there's going to be room for them in the future. Glasgow Distillery, I think this is the last year that they can participate based on their founding year. So there's going to be more space here in the future. And I think that the new distilleries, the new independent distilleries, is one of the most exciting spaces for me in whiskey right now. I'm glad to have this category while we have it here, Ralphie.
Yeah.
Okay. We move on. We're finished with distilleries now. We've got one more brand segment before we go into our last 2 categories, celebrating bottles once more. And this is all about the independent bottlers. We celebrate independent bottlers because of the privilege that they bring us. We can enjoy our favourite spirits not just through official releases, but from all the single casks, the small batch releases, and the experimental stuff from indies, with a different take on things. They're focused on quality and fair prices, and that's the indies that we want to celebrate. This is also a trifecta category because Signatory Vintage has won this comfortably for 3 years in succession. Signatory Vintage will receive a trifecta award, and we get to see who wins in their absence. Ralphie, when you're ready.
And the nominations, Roy, are as follows: Adelphi Selection,
3rd time nominee.
Cadenheads,
2nd time nominee.
Gordon and MacPhail,
The only 4th time nominee we have in the OSWAs. Sorry.
North Star Spirits,
4th time nominee. What I meant to say is the only category we have 4-time nominees is independents.
We're doing fine, Roy. We're doing fine. The nominations shall continue. the Scotch Malt Whisky Society,
Fourth time
SNomination,
nominee.
and Thompson Brothers.
Third time nominee. Here we see a category, Ralphie, that obviously, as I mentioned in there, we've got 3 entries here that were nominated time and time again, Gordon MacPhail, North Sash Spirits, SMWS, but never made it through because Signature Vintage were involved. Going to be interesting to see if one of them can make it this time, but they're up against some really, really tough competition. Adelphi Selection, who's celebrated, and every single outturn that comes out with them, it seems, is really sought after and disappears. Cadden Heads is the oldest and one of the most loved. And we've got Thompson Brothers, those guys up in Dornoch that can't seem to do anything wrong. The stuff that they're releasing is fantastic and has whiskey bothers excited every time. This is a fascinating setup here. My only frustration here is there's a lot of independent bottlers out there that are just a little bit smaller in scale. You know, the Carnmore, the Dramore, Watt Whisky, Little Brown Dog, and countless others that are doing fantastic, fantastic things. But because of their access to distribution networks, because of their scale, because of their size, they remain that little bit more kind of local, domestic, parochial, that type of thing.
Indeed.
So that's when the community needs to shout and say, these are great, but I am also enjoying this. When you vote, when you put your votes together for the categories, for the nominations tonight, under every single category, everyone gets a chance to put in their people's choice. I implore you to put your people's choice in. Even if you've already voted for it, duplicate it, put it in there, because it's a completely separate thing. The people's choice is not an award. There is no prize given out for the people's choice. Ralphie and I share it as a top 10 list in every single OSWAs winner ceremony. So if you feel in any of the categories, like I do in this category, that there is somebody missing, that's your chance to talk about it. Thank you, Count Basie. Anything to say, Ralphie?
Nothing really to add, Roy, except to say that there are a lot of small and exciting independent bottlers. And particularly as we come up towards the end of the year, my recommendation to the Whiskey Chasing Malt mates is look out for the feedback that you get, particularly from the specialist retailers and from out of whiskey clubs, for some of these bottlings coming from independent bottlers you may never have heard of, because the real sparkling gems of single casks, single malts tend to be found within the independent bottlers. And you see signs of this in auctions, particularly online whiskey auctions, where the collectors who are after drinkable whiskey are moving away from perhaps some of the overhyped official bottlings, which are overpriced, and going for independent bottlings of aged, old school, single cask, extensive matured whiskies, which are very much the flavors of yesteryear.
Yeah, absolutely. As I look over the camera, behind the camera is one of my whiskey shelves here, Ralphie, and I'm struck we're spoilt by choice. As I look over the back here, we've got, you know, James Eady, we've got Woodrow's of Edinburgh, we've got Elixir Spirits, we've got Murray McDavid, and just if I keep studying the shelves for long enough, there's so many independent bottlers out there. We understand that depending on where you may be, you might not be able to get your hands on these products, but you may happen across them one day. You may be traveling. You may know someone else that is traveling. And if you're armed, you're forewarned, and you know what to look out for, and you know what people are enjoying, and it can limit the risk of you gambling on a bottle purchase, right?
Absolutely. And you reduce the gambling by getting out your mobile device. It's just this simple. You simply scan the bottle, look at the reviews, look at the information there, and it seriously narrows down your decision-making process, because the collective archive of whisky narrative and commentary online is growing year after year, making the online space simply one of your most useful guides as to what's worth buying and what's perhaps worth leaving in the shelf.
Certainly the most up to date. If a bottle drops, there's a good chance that somebody online is going to talk about it the same day it drops. Quite fascinating. Okay, 2 more categories to go, my friend. 2 more, and it's celebrating bottles, world whiskey, and the best Scotch whisky. Let's move on to the world whiskey. And we define world whiskey by pretty much anything that is not Scotch. This category celebrates the best the world has to offer. When we're experiencing a boom in whiskey, not just in Scotland, but everywhere right across the globe, this category recognises that phenomenon with products from any country, anywhere. And just the same as the non-malt category, we don't mind if it's spelt with an E or without an E. It's all about the flavour and the quality. When you're ready, Ralphie.
And the nominations are as follows. Balcones, Texas, single malt whiskey.
Second time nominee, last nominated back in 2021.
Cotswolds, English single malt whiskey.
Last nominated back in 2022, second time nominee.
Indri Trini, Indian single malt whiskey.
Last nominated in 2023, second time nominee.
Nika Yoichi, Japanese single malt whiskey.
Second time nominee.
Wild Turkey, Rare Breed Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
Second time nominee and the winner back in 2023.
Finally, White Peak Wireworks Bourbon Barrel English single malt whiskey.
First time nominee. Well, we've got some really, really familiar faces here, I have to say.
And we're really traveling around the planet here, Roy.
We are. We are. Well, yep. Go ahead.
The US, England, India, Japan, back to the US, back to England.
Yeah.
It's something that we keep an eye on is the globalization of whiskey's identity, with some stunning distilleries outside of the US, outside of Scotland, outside of the UK, in other countries, which are finding their feet and consolidating their identity. And one of the earlier nominations was Millstone, Zweden distillery in Holland, which is most certainly a rising star on the world stage. We're seeing some splendid French single malt whiskey now. And we know that there's distilleries in practically everywhere. Everywhere. And all they have to do is survive and thrive and become more comfortable in the singularity of their single malt identity. So they're not trying to pretend or recreate Scotch whisky. They're being their own kind of whisky. And when you see the fact that they are not bound by Scotch whisky's regulations of specifically having to use oak casks of a size not exceeding 700 litres, when to have some bearings as to the fantastic variety of flavors that comes from wood, either in their cask construct or as inner staves, it just throws the whole barn door wide open as to what the future of whiskey is going to be and what's going to be available to us.
I think I would like to see that celebrated in this category in the future. But if we are honest and we look at the selection we have in front of us today, 5 out of the 6 are malt whiskies. 5 out of the 6 have been nominated in the past. Thank goodness for White Peak Wireworks making it through. So that says White Peak there, but the brand here is actually Wireworks. The White Peak is the distillery. And thank goodness that that's made it through there, because it really adds a nice fresh injection of adrenaline into this category. You know, you look that it's mostly malt, and it's very, very familiar brands, and yet I remain, with one exception, to be slightly irked and frustrated by price. Indri is still available at a very, very fair price for the quality and presentation and transparency on that bottle. The rest of them, you could argue Wild Turkey Rare Breed is very well priced, as we already have in the OSWAs earlier today, but you could argue that the others could do with a wee bit of tweaking on price. Cotswolds, £49. I know that you can regularly buy that much cheaper than that. This is a recommended RRP we're going with here. White Peak, £65, fantastic whiskey. But again, this is kind of typical price for English whiskey right now. Nika Yuichi is a bit pricey given it's a non-age statement, but it is Japanese. Balcones Texas single malt, not a lot of it around. What does make it here, we have to pay £70 for. Kyle Taylor in the comments mentioned something that was like reading my mind. There are no Irish whiskies in here, Ralphie, and that's scary to me. And I suspect it's because of price.
That's a major factor. And also that things have gone quiet for a while with Irish whiskey. I think that behind the scenes, there's a lot of maturing going on, developing of brands. And I certainly think in the future, Irish whiskey will be back again with us and more prominent on our radar. But still, the Irish whiskey scene is dominated by Bushmills in the north and Jameson's in the south and Tullamore Dew somewhere in the middle. And we're simply not seeing the character of the other Irish distilleries, and there's plenty of them now, who I think are busy just quietly honing their craft and sorting, as you mentioned, and perhaps sorting their prices out.
Well, I hope that that's the case. I hope that the cynicism dissipates a little bit. I hope that there's more transparency there in the sector, like all whiskey sectors.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future. But again, we've got another very, very varied selection here. Like you say, it is a trip around the world. 2 English, 2 American, a Japanese, and an Indian. Fantastic stuff to see. This is going to be a huge category in the future, I suspect. Okay, one more category to go, Ralphie, and it is the big one. It's the big one.
It is the one that draws the greatest amount of attention for people who know a bit about whiskey, but are saying, right, maybe I've got 2 or 3 years of experience under my belt, but now I want a top flight whiskey portfolio of open bottles, and any of the nominations for best Scotch whiskey in any year of the OSWAs are definitely contenders. But for this year, the nominations are as follows. Anock, 24-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey.
First time nominee.
Ardnamurchan AD Cask Strength single malt Scotch whiskey.
Second time nominee. This was nominated back in 2022.
Benromach Cask Strength single malt Scotch whiskey.
Second time nominee. Was nominated in 2023.
Bunnahabhain 12-year-old Cask Strength single malt Scotch whiskey.
Also nominated in 2023.
Kilkerran 16-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey.
Second time nominee, last nominated back in 2022.
And finally, Lachake 18-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey.
Second time nominee, last nominated back in 2022.
And as I was saying earlier, Roy, this is the category which any reasonably experienced whiskey fan, if they were to buy all 6 of these bottles, they would seriously amplify their portfolio of smell and taste quality. Not a single nomination in there is a whiskey which I wouldn't have nominated myself. They're all in their own way absolutely outstanding.
I think we've got 6 bangers.
Bangers.
6 beautiful, beautiful whiskies. My only heartbreak is we don't have anything in the lineup that's pure bourbon. It's just, but that's okay. I mean, if you look at the Ardnamurchy and the PT take on it, there's a lot of bourbon in the mix there. Anok is a wonderfully complex thing. Benromac's a banger every year it comes out. Bunnahabhain's already got a cult following for the cask strength. 16 is just, the Kilkerran 16 is just elegance. If you can imagine Campbelltown elegance, that's what it is for me.
Yeah.
And the Leadchick 18 has been my whiskey of the year. Love the stuff. What I noticed though, Ralphie, is that 3 in the middle here, cask strength, cask strength, cask strength. We are seeing official bottlings, this proliferation of this bolstering the core range with a cask strength expression. And it's proven to be quite a successful thing for these distillers.
And the reason for that, Roy, is that the modern whiskey drinker has infinitely more confidence in their own palate than they used to have in the old days when a 40% single malt or anything round about that was perfectly acceptable and there wasn't a second thought given to it. The consciousness of the average whiskey drinker is changing dramatically, Roy, from even 10 years ago, and certainly when we look at the eccentrics, including myself, back in the 1980s, the 1990s, going in these treasure hunts for cask strength bottlings.
Yeah, and they were treasure hunts back then, yes. Yeah,
they were treasure hunts. And by the way, we did find treasure. We absolutely did. But the majority of the single malts, people never saw beyond the standard, what are now fairly ubiquitous brands like Glenfiddich, like Glenlivet. But now we have this morphing consciousness and self-confidence in developing one's palate, and the appreciation that comes from that investment, that self-investment. So you have a lineup of whiskies which are very well informed. I must commend the online community who have participated in providing this shortlist, because it's absolutely spot on.
I think, and what I'm most pleased about is that we have the consistency in place. We have the familiar selections that you would expect to see, the ones that you would be asking questions potentially if they weren't there. I know that there are some things missing, but we continue with this project. We're going to continue into the years ahead. But like I say, 50% of the nominations that we shared with you tonight didn't exist, and they weren't part of it in 2023. And 18 out of 54 nominations are first-time nominees, brand new to the canvas. A clear, clean 1/3 of the nominations have never appeared in the OSWAs before. It makes me genuinely excited and grateful to be part of this community that without any specific designer guidance, it just naturally brings this stuff to the surface. And that can only be done by the power of the internet, sure, but it can only be done by the powers of trust and collaboration. And again, we all benefit out of it.
We do. And I find it quite exciting, Roy, that it's quite clear to me now that the online Scotch Whisky Awards, in what is now their 4th year, is becoming a very legitimate barometer for the whiskey industry to refer to as to what people are looking for and what people want to buy. And if they don't want their brands to be sitting on shelves for months on end, gathering dust and getting on substantial discount and sales just at the worst time of year.
Yep.
This is what they need to be mindful of.
This is the stuff that we're loving. If we're loving it, we're going to shout about it. We're going to talk about it. Justin Wan is saying this one's for Ralphie. He needs to take money from us. Thank you very much, Justin. And we've
No,
also got,
right.
I know, Ralphie. Good luck trying to get Ralphie to take money. And Antonio D is saying, too many sherried whiskies. There's a lack of variety or cask type. So this is the feedback we're talking about, Ralphie, right? Is that it's not, I've already mentioned, there is not a single bourbon cask, pure bourbon cask in that mix that we can rely on to be pure ex-bourbon or ex-refill, whatever it may be. Antonio's echoing that and saying, look, even if we went into our specialist retailers or wherever we buy our whiskies from, we're seeing that very same thing when it comes to the core range, because they are being led by importers, by representatives, by agencies, by people out there that know lazily dark whiskey sells.
Yeah.
I argue it may sell, but flavorful whiskey will sell and sell and sell again.
Correct.
We need to get off of this bandwagon of only chasing dark. And Antonio is absolutely right. And he's probably quite representative of the Scotch whisky drinking community in general. We're far more aware, and we don't need to chase these super dark whiskies all the time. What we eventually learn is that flavor does not come with color.
And we are self-educated as to the persistent narrative of some of the less enterprising whiskey companies who are simply tiring us all with their lazy formulas.
The world is becoming more and more informed by the day.
You didn't think that was too controversial for the OSWAs, did you, Roy?
Oh, at the end of the day, Ralphie, we're doing our best. We're hardly professional, right? We do our wee best. We do our wee best. Listen, if you've enjoyed this session tonight, if you believe in what Ralphie and I are putting together, if you believe in the power of collaboration from this year, we put invites out to 80 individual collaborators in order to put this together. In the future, that may become more. Ralphie and I are experimenting this year because we're going to sites like Dramface, like Two Whiskey Brothers. And remember, we used to work with Malt Review before it wound down. And those are sites that's more than one person involved. So it doesn't seem fair that we ask them to distill their opinion into a single opinion, especially when each of the individual writers are responsible for their own guidance and their own. So in future, we'll find ways to involve them as individuals and not to necessarily represent a bigger entity. That's a little tweak for the future that we've experimented already in 2024. Yeah. There's ways to develop this thing and to bring it and to make it bigger going forward. If you're watching the OSWAs and you feel like you should be involved, if you feel like you're part of the online Scotch whisky community, please don't leave it to Ralphie to invite you or Roy to invite you, because there's just so much admin behind this whole thing. Go to oswa.co.uk or send an email or a message to Ralphie or I individually to say, hey, I love what you're doing. I'd like to be involved. But if you go to oswa.co.uk to do that, you'll see that there are guidelines to how you can be involved. I'm sorry, social media accounts is not good enough. You need to be active in thought and guidance and having opinions and sharing those opinions in order to help your peers in the community enjoy better experiences with whiskey. If you can do that, and if you've been doing it for a year and you've been active within the last year, then you qualify to participate in the Online Scotch Whisky Awards. I would welcome you all with open arms. The way that it's structured right now is now at a point that it's limitless. It doesn't matter how many contributors step forward. In fact, under the current structure, you could argue that the more informed contributors that we have, the better the product is.
Being more informed, Roy, provides more information for everybody.
Watch out for the decline of fortified wines consumption. I think we've got a wee bit of a cynic there in it. Listen, Antonio, I'm with you, buddy. Pessimism never leads to disappointment, right? But we hear you. So I guess that there's a symbiosis in Scotch whisky specifically. We need casks. But the boom of global whiskey right now means that there has to be diversion of casks. There has to be sustainability with casks. We have to find ways of reusing casks and reusing casks again and again and again. But I take your point on fortified wines. Okay, good stuff. Let's finish off, Ralphie, by encouraging everyone to just go ahead and vote right now. What I'm going to do live as I speak to you all right now is I'm going to go into the website and I'm going to, or maybe Rob could do this in the background if he's watching. I should have teed this up in advance. Either immediately after our stream tonight, as soon as this finishes, the poll on the website will go live. Don't think that you're going to come back in a couple of weeks and vote and then forget. Vote right now and click the option for you to receive a copy by email of what you voted for. And then if you go ahead in the next 5 weeks that this poll is going to be open, closes on the 20th of October, you can come back and you can edit your responses. If you've tried something that's going to change your mind a little bit, you can come back and change your mind as many times as you like. All you have to do is head over to oswa.co.uk. It might take me a minute or two to make those pages go live, but I suspect if my pal Rob Halford is watching in the background, he'll go in and he'll make those pages and that poll live. If it's not live immediately, right now, it'll be live in the next few minutes. I encourage everyone to go over to oswa.co.uk and to start your participation. Please do not forget to vote for your people's choice. It's completely separate from the vote. It's completely separate from the awards. We are building the community top 10 in 9 different categories, and we'll share every single one with you as a top 10 at the winners show that we put together on the 2nd of November. Good luck, everyone. Thank you as always for your trust and your participation. Ralfy, we draw another nomination show to a close.
We do.
If this has been useful to you as a community, please give it a like. Please feedback in the comments underneath. I know there's a lot of controversial feedback that you might want to give, and we don't mind that. Give your feedback, whatever it may be and whatever shape it's in, but please consider, rather than just critique, consider an alternative. Because probably you find that Ralfy and I and the people that help us put this together have chewed over some of the problems that you might spot. We're trying to keep the OSWAs simple. We're trying to keep it to 9 categories. How are we doing, Ralfy? We're an hour and a half to share the nominations for 9 categories. That's not too bad. Hopefully we'll get that. That's probably us pitching for a nominations, a winners show, still in the order of 2.5 to 3 hours, right? It's just the way of it. But we have to keep it compact. We have to keep it manageable. We have to keep it succinct. Would you agree?
I would agree. I think it's very exciting to tangibly see the OSWAs morph in the new appearance nominations, in established nominations from previous years returning. I think it's, as I mentioned, a very effective barometer. And it's going to be interesting to see the feedback that you and I and the community get from the industry itself, who perhaps, and many are already successful at this, who actually treat us all collectively with a little bit more respect for the value of our purse.
We hope that that's the case.
Yeah.
Ralfy, my friend, I'm going to close out with a wee bonus. I'm going to talk about how prices have changed over the... We noticed a difference from 2021 into 2022. Yep. We noticed the prices jump in the OSWAs. We've noticed the same happen from 2022 to 2023. But a takeaway, 2024 has dropped. Now, we're not comparing apples for apples. What we are comparing there is, because it's different nominations each time, but what those prices, what it represents is we can anecdotally see that some things have attenuated or stabilized in price in 2024. But what we realized through the nominations, the average price per bottle dropped from it went up to from 55 to £62.50 average price, and it dropped down to £61 for 2024. And I think the drop is not because it doesn't necessarily reflect that the prices are attenuating in the market quite yet. Some places, yes, What it is demonstrating is that people are willing to spend less. People have less.
Yeah.
This is critical. This is
And
not a
spend
surprise
more
to
carefully.
anyone.
It's very well presented by yourself, Roy, and you're highlighting that the customer, the active, proactive, engaged, loyal customer for Scotch whisky and other quality spirits is gaining a lot of experience in spending more carefully, spending more wisely, and knowing the true value and quality of what they're looking to source. They're not looking for frills. They're not looking for overblown messages. They're looking for the quality of the experience coming out the bottle itself. And a lot of the nominations here in the OSWAs accurately reflect that very nicely. The lineup for the best whiskey of the year, I think it's probably one of the best ever of all the OSWAs.
They're just six bangers. They really are. And you said it yourself. These were things that Ralphie would recommend from the bothy, right? They're all just cracking, and it shows that our community know what they're talking about. We've had a wee dram in from Doug Crisop. Doug, we've not seen you in a long time, buddy. It's great to have you in participating in the OSWAs. Thank you very much for your generous dram. And he's saying, thank you to the both of you for your service to the community. That's a perfect segue for Ralphie and I to raise a wee glass to say thank you to you and everyone that participated in putting this together. Think of the amount of people that's been involved and the information that we've shared with you tonight. It is really, really something to be grateful for. It's something that I am very, very grateful for. Ralphie, I've got a wee drop of whiskey left in this glass.
Absolutely.
I'll raise it to you.
Yeah,
and to
I'll tell you what,
everyone.
folks, if you see the Scotch mist in your glass, it means whatever it is, it's better. Isn't that right, Roy?
I would agree. Nothing to worry about. Cheers, Ralphie. We'll see you in the winner's show on the 2nd of November. Thank you, everyone. Please go ahead. Go and get your votes in. Get your people choice in. Come on. Let's go.
Do it.